It's
Okay, at 6 p.m., call the meeting to order. We'll start with the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, roll call, please, Marie.
Mrs. Rail? Here. Mrs. Head? Here. Mr. Davis?
Here.
Mrs. Lee? Here. Mr. Bembo?
Here.
Mrs. Medina? Here. Mr. Krings?
Here. Thank you, Marie. Student reps report. Desiree is not able to be here tonight, so Craig will give her report.
So here's what Desi said. DECA will be having a Christmas party where DECA members will be decorating sugar cookies to be sold during lunches before winter break. The profits made will go towards buying toys to be donated to Toys for Tots. And I'm sure the high school kids will be happy about Christmas cookies. Over 40 student council members volunteered for the neighborhood table last Thursday. Another 40 members rake leaves in November for the Day of Caring. DECA was able to send over 500 Dear Santa letters to benefit Make-A-Wish. Macy's is donating $1 for every letter sent. Lincoln is currently having a cold weather gear drive. There's a collection box in the office to donate coats, hats, mittens, etc. That's the balance of the report.
Oh, that's awesome. It's amazing to me to hear how busy those students are on top of being students. So, okay, we'll move on to the minutes.
Okay, I would make a motion to approve the special Board of Education meeting closed session of November 6th, the regular Board of Education meeting of November 12th, the special Board of Education meeting closed of November 20th, and the special Board of Education meeting closed of November 29th.
Second.
Okay, we have motion and second to approve the meeting minutes of the special Board of Education meeting closed session of November 6th, the regular Board of Education meeting of November 12th, the special Board of Education meeting closed session of November 20th, and the special Board of Education meeting closed session of November 29th. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Those minutes are approved. Do we have any comments from citizens tonight?
None.
Okay, thank you. Move on to committee reports. John, Business Services.
Thank you, John. Business Services met on December 3rd. We started at 6 and we ended at 6:03.
Okay, there is one correction, though, members present. Katie was here and Larry was absent.
We did not have any consent agenda items out of our meeting. We did some purchases review, which we'll pull them out. We had purchases of the two servers for video surveillance, which I believe we approved earlier, along with the radios, the digital radios with chargers to replace the analog radios that we had at Rams and Lincoln. Analog basically doesn't work anymore, so we had to go up to the digital.
Those are both part of the school safety grants, is right.
So at the end, I think these were safety grant items.
My apologies.
It's okay. Glad you covered it. And then the last item we reviewed was the brain pop purchases for our elementary schools. Software program for elementary schools. So with that, I submit the meeting minutes for our Business Services Committee.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second to approve the meeting minutes of the Business Service Committee. Could we amend that to with the correction?
With the correction that Mary was not here to
Okay, thank you. With that correction, motion is second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. Thanks for the report, Don. Move on to personnel. Cindy.
Personnel Services met last Monday, December 3rd at 6 o'clock, and from that meeting we have 4 consent agenda items, and they are as followed. 1, the committee recommends and I move to approve the 1 professional staff appointment. 2, the committee recommends and I move to approve the 2 support staff appointments. 3, the committee recommends and I move to approve the 2 support staff resignations. 4, the committee recommends and I move to approve a one-time stipend of $2,000 for Sarah Polo for the supervision of the Title VI program for the 2018-19 school year. This is additional job for this year, so it's just being prorated. Anybody want anything held out?
I'll second those motions.
Okay, we have motion and second to approve PS1 through PS4. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
And then we had some discussion and updates on the school district nurse salary compensation. And we had salaries from a lot of the schools around the state, but we asked them to go back and give us some salaries of what nurses in our area are getting, for example, at the hospital and the clinics. And that'll be coming forward, so there'll be some more discussion on this in the future. And with that, I move that the minutes from the December 3rd committee be approved as printed, and we dismiss at 6:18.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have motion and second to approve the Personnel Services Committee meeting minutes of December 3rd, 2018. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. These minutes are approved. Thank you, Sandy. We'll move on to Educational Services.
Thanks, John. The Educational Services Committee meeting was held on December 3rd, 2018. I called the meeting into order at 6:21, and there was no public comment. We have 3 consent agenda items. Does anyone want any of those held out? The first one concerned the Reading Recovery Consortium 66.03.01 cooperative agreement. And John Benbow, who is a member of our committee, asked that the number of the agreement be corrected to 66.03.01. It was just mistyped on the agenda. Kathy Stebbins-Hintz, our Director of Curriculum and Instruction, reviewed the background of reading recovery in Wisconsin Rapids, as well as consortium agreements the district has had previously with other districts. When Jackie Heinz, reading recovery teacher leader, retired at the end of 2014-15 school year, Wisconsin Rapids Public Schools, WRPS, made the decision to no longer have a consortium. Jackie Heinz has continued as the WRPS reading recovery teacher leader on a part-time basis. Recently, Black River Falls School District approached WRPS about entering into a 66.03.01 cooperative agreement. A contract has been drawn up to work with 2 of their teachers. Renewing the consortium would be beneficial both financially and programmatically. And the committee recommends, and I move to recommend approval of the 66.03.01 cooperative agreement between Black River Falls and Wisconsin Rapids Public Schools for participation in the Central Wisconsin Reading Recovery Consortium. Yeah, we're going to do them all. Then we went on to discuss grants, and the first one was a DPI mini grant, Cool to Be Kind. Ms. Stebbins-Hintz presented a recommendation to approve a Department of Public Instruction $1,000 mini grant that was authored and written by Mary Schultz, counselor at Lincoln High School, and the LHS Random Acts of Kindness group. Funds will be used by students to give anti-bullying presentations at all schools, provide recognition to staff and students, and support the Rise to Remember event on May 19, 2019. The committee recommends, and I move to approve the DPI mini grant entitled Cool to Be Kind for Lincoln High School in the amount of $1,000. Then we went on to discuss Act Now Staff Training Grant. Penny Antel, principal of Mead Elementary Charter School, explained how she and Michelle Walvogel, counselor at Mead Elementary, wrote and received this $1,500 grant for Mead Elementary Charter School. By accepting the grant, Mead staff will attend 4 30-minute sessions of training. The theme for this grant will be Choosing Kindness. Plans for activities throughout the school year include students pledging to choose kindness with their painted handprint and adding it to a wall in the school, Kindness Rocks, and possibly a midwinter Iditarod outdoor obstacle course. And that motion, the committee recommends, and I make the motion
to approve of the Act Now staff training grant for Mead Elementary Charter School in the amount of $1,500.
I'll second those three motions.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve DS 1, 2, and 3. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried.
Okay, then we went on to updates, and the first update was about the Mead Elementary Charter School report. And Ms. Antel introduced members of the governing council that were in attendance: Guadalupe Ansel, Denise Martel, and Heather Gris. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that, but
Grusinski.
No, Bristol.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Tessa.
no, Heather. So you'll get the spelling, or the whatever.
I get it.
Got
Yeah.
it in the
Pay
minutes.
attention. Hello.
Amy Heitzman, a teacher from Mead, was also in attendance. This is the 10th year Mead has been a charter school. Ms. Antel conducted a teacher poll about whether to continue as a charter school, as well as pluses and negatives of doing so. Ms. Ansel stated that the council will be meeting in December to discuss results of the teacher poll, and will then have a recommendation whether to continue with Mead as a charter school. Ms. Antel shared a handout of the 2018-19 goals for Mead, as well as accomplishments from the 2017-18 school year. She noted that Mead had 15 new staff members this year, resulting in a 20% staffing change. Then we went on to discuss the Mead Elementary Charter School outdoor classroom report. And Melissa Miller, reading and math interventionist at Think Elementary School and coordinator of the Mead Elementary Charter School outdoor classroom, updated the committee on the status of this project. She stated that a decision had been made to name this the Community Outdoor Learning Center to promote more community involvement. Last week, a meeting took place with Ed Allison, Director of Buildings and Grounds, and the architect. To date, $40,000 of the $100,000 goal has been met, including the $10,000 matching grant from Encourage. There are several fundraisers planned, and bricks can still be purchased for part of the walkway. Plans are to reach out to businesses for assistance, as well as more grant writing. Because of other updates to the school in June, breaking ground has been pushed back to July 2019. Then we went on to have an update and discussion on district athletic facilities. Craig Roran, our superintendent, introduced Ron Rasmussen, principal of Lincoln High School. Both updated the committee on the proposed athletic facilities at Lincoln High School, sharing a drawing as well as an aerial view. Plans to upgrade the LHS facility started about 6 years ago, with conversation around changes needed for the pool. With the pool concerns handled through recent construction projects due to grade level restructuring, we have an opportunity to now turn our attention to other facility needs, including the condition of the track, which has been an ongoing area of concern. Just recently, area softball and baseball groups approached WRPS regarding collaboration on a possible baseball and softball quadplex on the LHS grounds. This led to the eventual proposal submitted to the Legacy Foundation, including the potential renovation of specifically baseball and softball facilities, which then gave rise to an expanded conversation around nearly all LHS exterior athletic facilities. Since the conversation has only recently turned to the potential of renovating a number of athletic facilities at LHS, very little of this plan has been discussed publicly up to this point. However, Mr. Broran asked the committee for permission to bring the possibility of the project to the community via local stakeholders, including youth sports organizations, adult sports organizations, etc., and solicit input about where this might lead. Mr. Krings asked if the Chamber of Commerce had been contacted, and Mrs. Het asked if Fund 10 would finance any of this. Mr. Braun stated that the district would certainly involve the Chamber of Commerce. He also clarified that significant district funds from sources such as Fund 10 or others are not part of the plan. However, since this is located on school property, there may be maintenance and upkeep necessary in the future or other miscellaneous expenses generated that the district would be responsible for. We then went on to discuss school and district report cards for 2017-18. And Ms. Devens Hintz reviewed results of the 2017-18 school and district report cards. She noted that the district meets expectations and several of the schools exceeded expectations. Overall, the district lags behind the state in growth, but this is an area the district is working on. She also noted that the district did better this year on closing gaps. Next year's report card will include results from the ACT Aspire test. The district will also receive a federal report card to be released soon. Our last topic was homestays, Lincoln High School French program. Mr. Rasmussen explained that LHS hired a new French teacher this year, Justine Horvath. Ms. Horvath is working to develop a 3-week homestay program with students from France. She previously worked at 2 other districts in Wisconsin and implemented this program in those districts. Board members agreed this was a wonderful opportunity and encouraged implementation of the program. And with that, the committee recommends, and I move that we accept the balance of the minutes of the Educational Services Committee meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the Educational Services Committee meeting minutes of December 3rd, 2018. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The minutes are approved. Thanks for the report, Ann. Move on to agenda referrals and information requests. Do we have anything this month? Okay, legislative agenda. Do you have anything, John?
We had a couple things. There's a dark store committee set to meet for the final time perhaps tomorrow. And what the dark store committee is basically this is the way when Walmarts and all of these corporations close stores and then they will vacate and how communities tax them. They argue that they shouldn't be taxed as a business because it's empty. And so there's been a tussle about that, and this committee was getting together to come up with some guidelines or some information as far as for tax assessment practices that have not been able to be resolved right now. The final meeting of the Blue Ribbon Commission on School Funding, of which Craig had provided us information and our background on that, is set for December 19th at 9 a.m. at the Capitol in Madison. However, they'll be discussing and finalizing the recommendations for improving school funding formula based on testimony received in previous public hearings. However, no public input will be heard in this meeting. The extraordinary session, which I believe originally wasn't going to have anything to do with the school, did. They passed a bill requiring settlement funds to be deposited into the general fund, not the school common fund. Despite the fact that WASB and several other people have argued the state constitutionally requires that the funds be deposited into the common school fund established by the original state constitution. If you want to read more, there's a position on what WASB has and WASB is asking for a veto, and they had sent a letter to Governor Walker for a veto. There's another committee proposing dyslexia specialist guidebook. I haven't read much on it, but it's basically council committees met on identification and management of dyslexia, met to finalize 2 draft bills and 3 informal recommendations on December 4th in the state capitol. The committee will forward the bills recommendation to the Joint Legislative Council, who will decide whether to advance the bills to full legislature. I don't know exactly what they are. I think we'll read into them as far as that goes. While he does have they weighed in on the extraordinary session legislation relating to the settlement process and common school funding. You can go to the lobby, right? And read the full article that they have on that. I'm not sure what's going to happen. I'm guessing it's going to be approved. Because I don't see any veto coming out of the governor's office. Anyways, and then I just got my packet as far as the 2019 proposed resolutions posted to the WASB website. So if you want to see what's on there, I believe, are you going to include the,
Yes, in January.
Lorraine will include in our next board, or our board packets, that information on the things that WASB is proposing for that. There's a lot of them too. And then they're cleaning up some of the old ones because of Pac-Man and different acts that are no longer viable.
Certainly sounds like the only people that are going to be happy with that extra session are lawyers.
Yeah.
Tax dollars that we could use for the state are going to go towards fighting this. That doesn't bode well for the next legislature.
No.
I guess they got to figure out how to make it work. They were elected. Exactly. Okay, we move on to the bills.
Okay, I would make a motion that the receipts be noted, excuse me, and the bills be paid as printed.
Okay, we have a motion and a second that the receipts be noted and the bills be paid as noted. We have a roll call, please, ma'am.
Mr. Krings?
Yes.
Mrs. Medina?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Rayo?
Yes.
Mrs. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Bembo?
Yes.
Mrs. Head?
Yes.
Thank you, Rena. Thanks for the report, Don.
It's just interesting, this month we moved $13,000 with the rebates.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, that-
rebates.
Okay, we move into new business. Possible action on employee appointments, resignations, and retirement requests. Have any? Okay.
Mark it down.
Item B, discussion and possible action to approve the tentative agreement reached with the Wisconsin Rapids Education Association bargaining unit. So we met November 7th and exchanged proposals and realized that we were all on the same page. So they took a short caucus and came back and they were in agreement. So that was short and sweet.
That's the earliest that's happened in
The CPI was a little bit higher than it has been, so that's a good thing. Able to give better pay raises, more in line with cost of living increase. So.
And the disbursement being the same for all employees, I think, played a big role as well, and it makes a lot of sense. Based on their FTE, their full-time status.
Then I would move to approve the proposed 2018-19 WEA collective bargaining agreement.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the proposed 2018-19 Wisconsin Rapids Education Association collective bargaining agreement. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item C, review and approval of the district's auditor's report dated June 30th, 2018. Dan, I'm guessing you're going to get to go over this page by page.
First off, that report is at your spot in this bound packet if you're looking for it.
Did anybody get one that's just one-sided? The pages in here? The auditors used to give me one that was just one-sided, so it was easy for me to... No? Okay, I guess they didn't give me one this year. Anyway, now I got the same one you guys got. It had the same information, it's just one-sided. I'm going to start with the report on communication with those in charge of governance and management advisory. It's just the stapled pages that were in there. And if you flip to, I'm going to just summarize the whole thing. Flip page 3. Corrected and uncorrected misstatements. It just summarizes it. None of the misstatements detected as a result of audit procedures and corrected by management were material, either individually or in the aggregate, to each opinion unit's financial statements taken as a whole. So what they're saying is that there's a list on the last page lists some journal entries that were made. They're saying none of those journal entries affected the financial statements as a whole, which is good news, which we want.
These were just journal entries, aren't they?
Yeah.
They were just different journal entries, correct?
Right. The only thing on here were journal entries.
Right.
They're saying there was no really misstatement as a result.
It's pretty status quo.
Jumping to page 3, they're giving us an unqualified opinion, which means that's good. So just letting you know that. Moving to page 6, here's some financial highlights. It lists our total revenue, total expenditures. It indicates that there was an increase in fund balance. And even with that increase, our fund balance still is not at a level that we we still need to borrow, short-term borrow, even at the level it's at right now.
We're in the bound book right now, Dan, right? That's the basic.
We're in the bound book, I'm sorry.
Hey, it's not a letter anymore.
I should have said something. I'm just, in the past, you wanted me to go through here? Okay, so we're on page 6.
Of the book.
Of the book.
Yeah.
And we're viewing financial highlights. Even with the increase in fund balance last year, we're still not at a level that we still have short-term borrow this year. I don't remember the amount now. Was it 2 or 3 million, something like that? But it was much less than it has been in the past. Jumping to page 11, page 11. It just shows a breakdown of our revenue, our Fund 10 revenue. The biggest portion is state and federal aid, 51%. 33% is made up of property taxes. Then we have operating grants of 11%, and then other revenue. In the back, if you flip that over to page 12, you'll see the breakdown of our expenditures. 55% of our expenditures are instruction, direct instruction. That means teaching staff, instructional supplies, classroom supplies. Let's see here. Another 10% is for guidance counselors and psychs, those kinds of services. 14% is made up of principals, central office, building grounds, and then the administration along with their staff. And then 33% is operations and maintenance, that's Ed's department. And then we spend 5% on transportation, of 5% of 60 million. So we do spend a substantial amount on transportation. Let's see. They don't list what that pink is. I don't know. I don't remember. But anyway, that's 7% is other. I'm sorry, there it is. They didn't have the line going over. 7% is just other costs, transfers, payments to CISA, those kind of things. 14 is our input into the audit report. We just indicate that we're under open enrollment, and students can basically go wherever the parents want them to go, or wherever they want to go, or wherever they convince the parents they should go. Then I indicated that we had an increase in enrollment of 24 students. This is the first significant increase of enrollment since 2000 or before I got here. It's been dropping ever since I got here. So this is the first good news on enrollment since I've been here. Pardon?
It's leveled off.
It's starting to level off, yes. Let's see, the other, it talks about the hailstorm. We received $3 million in the settlement from the hailstorm. We're under Affordable Care Act, so that we are required to provide insurance to those staff who work 30 hours or more. Then we talked a little bit about the renovation projects, renovation at Lincoln, the addition to the middle school, and now we're also doing energy projects, lighting projects with LED lights, and then energy efficiency in the rest of the buildings in the district. Moving to page 16, that just indicates we have expenses of $68 million total. That includes special ed and the other funds, and offset by revenue of $74,000. Anyway, it's just a breakdown of our total expense and then our net of direct revenue, which would be, let's see here, most of that is direct revenue would be the special education aid we get through the state, that sort of thing. That's where you see the, under the total instruction, you see $4,873,000. That's direct aid to our special education programs or other programs. I'm not going to go through all the notes. I will flip to page 30 and note that this has changed significantly from last year. On page 30 under general obligation debt, on the bottom half, the $2,820,000 is our QZAB from back in 2006, I think is when we initiated QZAB. Then in 2007, we did some borrowing for some placing boilers around the district. And then that was refinanced in 2000, let's see here. We refinanced in 2015. That's the $2,915,000. That originally was, the original amount was, I didn't write it down here. Shoot. It was about $5 million, $6 million, if you remember that. You all approved that borrowing for some renovations. Then new this year is the $10 million for the energy projects at Lincoln, which included some of the pool and some of the locker rooms, the energy recovery systems in those areas. Included $9,200,000 for the Rams addition. It included $9,300,000 for energy projects around the rest of the district and the rest of the buildings. On page 31, it just addresses some defeased debt. Since we started defeasing debt, we've defeased a total through the end of last year, we've defeased a total of $17,870,000 of debt in the last 5-6 years. That's not in the report, I'm just letting you know.
What was that figure again?
$17,870,000
we've defeased. Of that, $1 million, what they're noting in here, of that, $1,310,000 is sitting in it with an escrow agent to be paid back when those notes become due, or those bonds become due. Moving to page 42. And I'm going through here very quickly. If there's anything you read that you want to ask a question about, feel free to do that. Okay, they totally redid our OPEB liability. It now takes up, used to be just a page, and now it takes up 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 pages. And I don't understand it. I read through this, and I don't know what they're trying to say. But anyway, let's see, where did I see that? Our obligations are going down. The reason for that is the board modified the criteria to be so that it was frozen at their last year's cost, so that as health insurance increases, our obligations do not increase for individual employees. So that helps significantly. Let's see.
So even though they take up 4 pages now, is the bottom line pretty much the same?
I'm not sure what they're trying to say, to be honest with you. I really don't know. This is totally new. I read through it. I don't... for instance, on the top of page 43, it shows, well, what would our obligation be if we did the 6.5% versus the 7.5% which they've used in their projections, or went with 8.5% increase in our health insurance, you know. That kind of information's in here. What they used was a 7.5, and then they're showing what it would be if it went one way or the other. Anyway, for what it's worth.
I think to answer your question, Sandy, that part in the middle of 42 where it shows increase and decrease, the last column is exactly what's taken out of the OPEB healthcare from the long-term liabilities. So the net OPEB healthcare liability, that column is what's taken out of page 30 where it's listed as our financial statement for a long-term liability. So everything beyond that is what is. From what I see out of it. But that last column, net OPEB healthcare liability, is what's taken out of the actual, what they reported.
But then, as far as the way we track expenses, we don't track it the way it's listed in the front here anyway. So
It's confusing.
when we actually record the OPEB payments and expenses and revenue, we record the actual amounts that we've deposited or received or withheld from employees. They don't tie out to the numbers that are in here.
The liability is based on if all eligible staff retire at the same time. So
That's correct. That's correct.
That's under government.
The total number in here is if everyone that is eligible for OPEB retired
Right now.
right now. Page 47.
If it does, we have any problems with that.
Although I will make a comment on our OPEB, teachers, all staff for that matter, are retiring later and later. When I first got here, many staff were retiring 58, 59. Now it's 62, 61, 62. So they're retiring later, and that's also decreasing our obligation.
Well, they retired at the beginning because their benefits were going down after the Act 10.
Yes, yeah, since then. But I think even without that, I think staff are working longer. Page 47, it just lists the excess expenditures over what we had in our budget. For what it's worth. We under budgeted for non-program transactions. We were $7,000 under budget, over budget in our transportation, and we were over budget in interest payments. On page 57, Let's see here. I just want to put out note 3. It shows what we spent on our special education programs, $9,310,439. Of that, that's what we spent last year. Of that, we should be getting 24.5% of that back this year, the special education aid. Previously, and it's been dropping every year. Last year, the amount we got back was 25.67%. So unless the state modifies that, our reimbursement for special education costs will continue to drop. On page 63, they're saying that we don't prepare this book in-house. And then on page 64, they're saying that's probably okay because they do it. So. That's good. And that takes us to the end.
Correct, assuming our voucher charters, our voucher schools, when it comes to special education, they are some sufficient, whatever it costs, they get back. Is that true?
They don't get back, they get from us.
Well, but I mean, it's some sufficient, whatever it costs.
Correct. So if they convene,
Yeah, it comes from the district.
yeah,
But I mean, it's some sufficient, so it could
it
be.
is. If they convene an IEP meeting, Sandy, and identify $120,000 of cost for one kid, we would pay it under statute as it's currently written. That's accurate, yes.
And didn't the state come back and say they were going to go back to funding education at what, 33%? But did that come out a month or so ago, and did that include special education or not?
There's a whole group of committee on special education.
But I meant,
Two topics. One was the reverting back to 2/3 funding,
Yeah.
which was not relevant to special education funding, school funding. So looking at that 66% threshold in terms of aid. And I'm guessing, based on the prior governor, it would have been categorical aids funded at 2/3. But the secondary conversation was around special ed. Governor-elect Evers had mentioned increasing special ed funding to 60%, and then eventually maybe even 70 or 80% longer term, which would be a significant change in the dollar amount. The reimbursement,
We triple what we're getting right now.
Correct.
It was at 60.
what Dan is speaking to with respect to the reimbursement, I'm not certain if that was part of the 60%. As he was talking about it, I was thinking about the same thing. If that's part of the 60% or that's separate from, I don't know that. I don't know that that was clarified yet.
okay.
Any questions?
Scintillating report as always, Dan.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Very nice.
And thanks for the information, Dan, the explanations, that's helpful.
House wants to move to approve the district auditor's report from Ash Hawkins CPAs dated June 30th, 2018.
Second.
Okay, we have motion and second to approve the district's auditor's report from Hawkins Ash CPAs dated June 30, 2018. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I was just going to make another comment about that. Years and years ago, right after I got here, back 2 years, the board decided not to have the auditors come because they charge for coming. It's still an option if you ever want them to come and present. They're perfectly willing to do that, but they would charge you for that, just so you know.
Not needed.
It's not just because of all we pay them every year.
In addition to what we're paying them right now.
I think we're good having you explain it.
I probably don't explain it the same way they would, but
Well,
If the price is right.
Sandy would like to get home to watch the Vikings tonight. Peter, another hour listening there. Okay, item D, discussion and possible action to amend the 18-19 district budget.
We had the most significant change in our account codes ever, I think, this year. We totally revamped our accounting structures. What it was the federal government wanted to start getting information by building. They passed it down to the state. State then figured out what they had to do to accommodate whatever the federal government wanted, which I assume is Department of Education, and then passed that down to us. Some of the information we didn't get until October, as far as what account codes we were supposed to use. It's been a circus this fall anyway. And we're just getting our budget ready to upload to DPI. I uploaded the special ed today. Hopefully we can get the rest of the budget uploaded tomorrow. I think it was due 2 weeks ago or something like that. And then we still have a budget report to do by building, which is, we still don't have the software to do it, so I'm not sure when we're going to get that done, but we're promised that we're supposed to get the software to get that done.
Who's providing the software?
Pardon?
Who's providing? We have to buy the software?
We have to provide the software. So our software provider, but they're not any slower than Skyward. Skyward is first coming out with some of that school-based software also.
It's nothing new that we have to purchase though, Sandy.
No.
Elio has to update their...
It's just they have to update the systems. The report is due Friday. I don't believe we're going to have it in by Friday. We still haven't loaded their software yet. They haven't provided us with it.
Because we went from how many account codes to how many account codes?
We tripled, no more than that. In the salary, just the salary instruction, salary and benefit codes, we quadrupled or the number of account codes we're using.
Yes. So this is referencing what Dan's talking about. You probably heard, I want to say it was 3 years ago is when the talk began about it, building-based budgeting. And this was coming down from the federal government and of course the state government. And what you're doing then is budgeting, rather than saying, okay, we have 350 teachers in the district, these are elementary, these are secondary.
And that's how we use the budget.
And budgeting in that capacity, every district that I'm aware of budgeted in that capacity. Now you have to budget that based on building, but think about the fact that you might have a staff member that goes to 4 buildings, or 3, or 12. And then you have supplies and computers and software programs, and all of that has to be, so you take what used to be, I don't know, just even think about compensation, would have been secondary and elementary, and then there's some other subcodes with those, but just those two, and you're going to break it down between all of the buildings that we have, just for salary. And then you do all the other pieces, and they're spread in that capacity. So when Dan mentions this being a massive undertaking...
6,000 count codes before, now we're up between 20 to 30,000 count codes.
There you go. And the implementation, they've discussed this coming, I think it was 3 years ago, and each year, it's coming, and this is the year that the transition is taking place. So you may have heard something about that a few years ago.
And what was the rationale for doing this?
So that you can more easily articulate, if you look at Wisconsin Rapids Public Schools, you can say, okay, there's 300 kids at Mead and there's 300 kids at Woodside. I'm just ballparking because that's not the population, but let's pretend. And the dollars and cents are appropriate to the needs of the building. So I can look at federal programs, some grant dollars we get with Rep Title and these other grant programs and say, well, there's need at Mead because of the population, so it stands to reason that they'd be getting additional funding for things like Title or other federal programming, whereas Woodside maybe not necessary. Or Woodside, you might see very significant special ed funding because of the population served there versus, so that's really what it comes down to is an ability, I believe, for them to report as a state to the federal government that this is how we're spending the dollars at WRPS, almost down to the kid nuance or, very little or very generally the building level at a minimum. And that's what that comes from.
The district always tracked it. I mean, they knew how many teachers we had at Grant versus Mead versus Howe. I mean, we always tracked
Absolutely.
that and accommodated special needs.
But it wasn't part of your budget report?
No.
And we've always had the practice of staffing buildings with needs with more staff. Or there's, and you guys know that, there's more staff time devoted to building X versus building Y in reading interventions or math interventions or special ed, and it's based on the demographic or the population. That's status quo, but that wasn't reflected, well, in a budget. And it was reflected in our revenues and expenditures, but not that intensely specific. So it'd be like buying groceries, but now you're going to account for, you're going to go home, not only are you going to develop your grocery budget, but you're going to develop a budget for bananas, oranges, apples, cucumbers, pears. Honestly, that's what the level is. Rather than just saying, I spent $400 this month on groceries, you're going to say $23.13 on, cleaning supplies. And that's basically what you're doing.
Anyway, it's been a major investment of time and resources for the last 3-4 months. And my staff are getting a little tired, but we'll get in there. Anyway, with that introduction, I'll go through some of the budget changes since our budget hearing back in June. You'll see a significant increase in their local revenue. That's not really accurate. In June, I showed the levy for the energy projects. I showed that separate from Fund 10. I showed it as a levy in Fund 38. In actually getting the levy ready, I changed my mind on that and decided to levy it in Fund 10 like we always have in the past, just because if I need to make a change, it's easier to change one levy than it is to change 2 levies. So what I do is I levy it in Fund 10 and then transfer it to Fund 38 to make the payments on the energy, on the bonds that are due. So that's the significant increase you see there, the $3,467,000. It's not exactly that amount. We also did have an increase in our tax levy, so that's that was approved this fall. So that's also included in that $3,467,000. Under state sources, we had some grants, some additional grants that we didn't have approved in June. You see some federal revenue. So anyway, the total difference in the general fund was $4,200,000. The bulk of that was for the energy projects. Rather than levying it for it in Fund 10, I moved it all. Levying for it in Fund 38, I moved it all to Fund 10. Then down below under expenditures, the big increase under regular curriculum was grants that we received that were recorded since last June. And then jumping down, the $1,246,000 decrease in central services, that was due to accounting change, the account code changes that DPI made. That money was actually moved down to other support services, $1,159,000. It dropped down 3 rows there from that. Then the other significant one, the $1,718,000 increase under transfers. That's the transfer, now transferring the money from Fund 10 to Fund 38. Let's see here. In the, under special project funds, we actually decreased, a decrease in our revenue and a decrease in our what we're spending. Referendum debt, let's see here, where we increased the amount that we're paying out now on the bond payments. I adjusted that, so we actually had to increase $300,000 for some of those payments. Capital projects, I was just anticipating last year that we would be all done with the projects we're still not done with the projects. In fact, we still have a substantial amount to be built yet on just the middle school. That's retainage. Is what happens is when they're required to retain a certain portion of the billing as retainage until we actually sign off on the total project. So I anticipate there'll be another $1.4 million paid out between the high school and the middle school. The other big change, the other big item is Fund 73. That was not part of our budget hearing, budget adoption. The way, but we're projecting $1,414,000 of retiree payments this year for teacher, staff health insurance, I should say, retiree health insurance. And then the big change on the community service fund was we added a project to enclose the new portion, the new gym built there, and provide a walkway to the pool. Okay. Right now, you have to go outside one door, and that'll be enclosed. That's the final portion of the increase in Fund 80 there. So that.
And the doors are literally 10 feet apart.
Right. We're gonna enclose that and there'll be an exterior door, I believe, in that vestibule, but it'll make it easy to get from. You can actually enter on the south doors there and get into the pool. Spectators can get into the pool that way by going straight in.
So
the bleachers are right.
Pool in wintertime. Because otherwise that pool door was an exterior door.
And we did have frost on that door, yeah. We were getting cold air coming in that door. But this will not only provide easier access for spectators, but it'll also...
So this was something that was designed after the fact?
Yes. That was not part of the original design.
Probably should have been.
It should have been, no question about it.
There's a door here, and then they saw the door
Yeah.
there, and I said, why can't you put a roof over that?
But I'm not,
If you remember,
On the front end.
well, you don't remember because I don't know, you weren't involved that involved. Well, maybe, but we actually moved the entire new gym down to the south. And there are two reasons for that. That was our proposal, not the architect's proposal. That was our proposal because he had corners and jogs in the south side. Well, you don't want that because it's a place for kids, debris to collect, kids to hide, all kinds of things. So we wanted a straight front. Well, that's not architecturally, they don't think that's architectural, I guess. And then we actually pushed out the storage area, so we actually increased the storage area at no cost increase because the wall was already there. I mean, we just now moved the wall out and had more interior area for storage. But again, that was not part of the original design either.
And that was somewhat budget-driven too, because at that time we didn't have approval for the community locker room either. So, and the park has back there for people to park. So it was just kind of an emergency exit. Well, we ended up building the doors big enough so we could get bleachers between the pool and the auxiliary gym, the new gym. But they'd have to be pushed through outside. And like Superintendent Burns said, it was a low spot too. There's an air plenum underneath, and water kind of collects in there. So yeah, it makes sense. It made sense to close it in. We didn't really have a purpose for it though before the community locker room was built, and then now we can put an entrance in there for spectators and parents.
I will have actually 2 access points to the pool for spectators. They can either come in through the high school, the original entrance, or they can come through through, down that long hallway by the new gymnasium.
When they did away with the jogging and made it straight, that should have been cost savings too, because jogs are pretty expensive.
Yep.
Right,
It was.
right, it was. We actually did, we saved on the corners, but then we had more floor space inside to finish, so it was a wash on.
And there's big air intake too that we had to reconfigure, so that was, it saved quite a bit of money moving it down, like Dan said,
Right.
it flushed to the front of the
The
building.
wall would have covered up our intake, air intake,
Oh.
and so that's why we pushed the building down.
So it was actually driven to save money. It was Dan's idea. I can't take all the credit for it.
But anyway,
But it actually saved us money initially.
yeah, we didn't have to redo the air intake.
So what is the time frame for completion of this walkway? Do we have the?
It took
I don't
about three months to get us a budget for it. They're planning on starting it this winter.
This winter?
So, yeah.
Okay.
I'll know a little more after Tuesday.
The other thing is that when they do it in winter, it's at a slow time for them, so it's usually, we can get a better price on it.
I'd make a motion to approve the proposed amendments to the 2018-19 district budget.
Okay, we have motion and second to approve the proposed amendments to the 2018-19 district budget. Please have roll call, Marie.
Mr. Bembo?
Yes.
Mrs. Medina? Yes. Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Rayo?
Yes.
Mrs. Head?
Yes.
Mr. Krings?
Yes.
Mrs. Lee?
Yes.
Thank you, Marie. Looking at the calendar, we have a meeting next Monday, the 17th at 5 p.m. and then another meeting immediately following that one. So with that, we're adjourned. Thanks, everyone.